Is renting all bad? Or is renting optimal for everyone? This is an important question. And I'm sure a lot of you watching this that are deciding between renting and owning are asking this question of yourselves. And this is a topic that's very close to my heart because for the majority of my adult life, I was a tenant. First in Brooklyn, then in Manhattan, then back in Brooklyn. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago that my wife and I bought our first primary residence here in North Jersey that I became a homeowner, followed by becoming a landlord. And this is something I think about a lot because this has been in the news frequently, and this is a topic that comes up all the time on social media. And some people are fervent believers that homeownership is the only way, and some people believe that homeownership is overrated and renting is the best way forward. So in this video, I want to break down some of the advantages, but also some of the disadvantages to renting. First things first, to make an obvious point, renting is a lot easier if you don't plan to stick around for long. If your time horizon is, let's say, 1 to 3 years, it's a lot easier to just sign a lease for a year and renew it if you need to. And then when you have to move, you pack up and leave, right? It's not the same with a house that you own or a condo that you own because you have to put it on the market for sale. Might take a while to sell it. There are closing costs involved. So with renting, you don't have any of those headaches, right? And this is ideal if you don't really have a stable geographical situation as far as your work situation, right? Like let's say if you need to move for work reasons, or you are getting another degree, you went back to school and you know that once you finish your graduate degree, you'll be going back to your home state. Or maybe you are expecting changes in your family structure and you know that you'll be living here for a year and then you're expecting your first child, you'll be moving out to the suburbs. These are all good reasons to rent because it doesn't keep you in that place as much as ownership does. So that's reason number one, the ease of moving out and moving on. Reason number two, renting is a great way to test out living in a certain town or neighborhood. It's a much easier way to live for a year in a particular area and say, we love it here, we're ready to buy. Or say, you know what, this is not the best fit for us, we should probably look elsewhere. As opposed to buying in a neighborhood only to discover 6 months later you actually hate living there for all kinds of reasons, right? The neighbors, the commute, maybe the schools, maybe the noise level, or maybe the lack of dining options, whatever the case may be for you. Some people end up regretting their decision. And when you're a renter, it's a lot easier, cost-wise, actually emotionally as well, and time-wise to just pick up and leave and move on to a different town or even a different city. So that was the second advantage, which is to test a specific area. Advantage number three, unlike buying a house, which in North Jersey usually requires a pretty sizable mortgage, renting does not carry any debt burden with it, right? When you sign a lease, you're on the hook for the duration of the lease and the total dollar amount. As opposed to buying a home, you're on the hook for the entire mortgage balance, right? If you stop paying your mortgage, the bank can come after you and foreclose, take away your home. Advantage number four, unlike owning a home where certain expenses can go up over time, property taxes, home insurance costs, if you're in a flood zone, the cost of flood insurance, even things like zoning changes and local ordinance changes, like when they pass laws that might impact the value of your property. These are all things you do not have to worry about as a renter because these are not your problems, right? You don't have to worry about home insurance or flood insurance. You're not the one paying property taxes. And if zoning laws change and it impacts the quality of life in the neighborhood, you could always pick up and move at the end of your lease term. My favorite advantage of renting is actually the fact that you're not responsible for fixing things when something breaks. You're not responsible for addressing a leak, and you're not responsible for home maintenance and improvement. These are all obviously things you are responsible for as a condo owner or homeowner, but as a renter, if something breaks, you call the super or the landlord or the property management company. And it's a much more passive way to live in your home and not have to deal with some of the headaches and frustrations that homeowners often complain about the most, which is taking care of your property, fixing problems, right? And some problems can be very costly, right? If your roof fails and there's now an active leak, it's not just the expense of patching the roof or in some cases having to replace the roof, it's also the expense of repairing the water damage, replacing sheetrock, repainting. If there's a bathroom leak because of a plumbing issue, that can go through the ceiling and affect all the floors below it. If let's say it's an upstairs bathroom. As a renter, it's somebody else's headache. You just have to report it. Obviously, it might affect your quality of life for the week or two that it takes to fix an issue, but at least it's not money out of your pocket. So that's another key advantage. And one last advantage that I want to mention is the fact that when you're renting, you're not tying up a good chunk of your free capital into buying a home, right? Which involves down payment costs, involves closing costs. Sometimes you have to pay points to lower your mortgage rate, especially in a higher rate environment we're in today. With renting, you can still have your cash in the bank. You can have money invested in the stock market. You can have money invested in private enterprises. So you could do a lot more with your liquid assets, whereas when you're buying a home, especially in an expensive market like New Jersey, typically you're committing a good percentage of your liquidity into buying that home. So it kind of leaves ammunition, so to speak, for you to make certain decisions that you may not be able to make if you take all the cash you have and plop it into a down payment towards your dream home. Now, switching gears. Obviously, there are also some disadvantages to being a renter. So I want to spend the next few minutes highlighting just a few. The first disadvantage, I think, is the most obvious one. You have no control over your future housing costs. You might sign a one-year lease, which is the most common in our market here, at a specific rent, but you have no idea what the rent will be a year from now, let alone 3, 5, or 10 years from now. And as we know, just looking at historical trends, rents generally only go in one direction over time. I'm not suggesting rents can never decline, but if you zoom out and look at a long enough time horizon, rents generally go in one direction, which is up. If you guys are analytical, you can run your own numbers and take your current rent and use an online calculator and assume, let's say, 3% average rent increase year over year, and see what your rent today would look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, assuming, let's say, 3% average appreciation every year. And you could see how much higher your rent number would be in the future if you stay. And that's assuming 3%, which is a very reasonable assumption to make. So you're almost guaranteed to pay more in rent over time if you stay a renter. Another key disadvantage, and I think this is as important as the first one, if not more important, there's no skin in the game. You have no equity as a tenant. You have no ownership stake, right? So you're completely missing out on long-term price appreciation if you were to own that unit. You're missing out on any tax advantages that homeowners have. And if you move out, if you've been in the same apartment for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and you move out, you have gained nothing. Meanwhile, the landlord, and in some cases, you've actually been helping the landlord pay down his or her mortgage by paying him rent or her. The landlord has benefited from price appreciation, from principal pay down if they have a mortgage on the property. Meanwhile, you've just been paying rent. And chances are that rent has been going up while you've been living there. So when you move out, the landlord says, thank you very much and good luck. And you just walk away with, your personal belongings and your furniture. Another important disadvantage is that the landlord is in control of all the important decisions when it comes to your rental. As opposed to a homeowner who is making all the decisions, you as a tenant are very limited in terms of what you can do. In fact, almost every lease I've seen says no alterations, right? And in a lot of cases, it'll even say no smoking, no pets, let's say, and no painting or other alterations without written consent from the landlord. So sometimes you can't even paint. Of course, some tenants paint and then they just kind of revert back to, let's say, the regular white when they moved in. But it's not your place. You can't just say, let's renovate the kitchen, let's change the backsplash, let's replace the countertops. We don't like the vanity in the bathroom. I mean, some landlords might be like, you know what, you're gonna improve my property, you wanna pay for it, that's fine. But even if the landlord says that's fine, it's not yours at the end of the day. So when you move out, you will have incurred the cost of replacing the vanity in the bathroom or upgrading the kitchen, but you're not getting any benefit from it besides, the quality of life while you're still there. When you move out, the landlord keeps the new vanity. The landlord keeps the new cabinets or counters. So the lack of control as a tenant when it comes to design decisions, paint color decisions, to some people, I think that would be a very important disadvantage, as opposed to owning a home or a condo where you can decide what you want it to look like inside and out. So what's the answer for you? The answer is, I can't give you that answer. You have to figure it out for yourself. No one knows your situation better than you do. My advice for you, as someone who was a tenant for a very, very long time in New York City, and who's now been a homeowner for a good number of years in New Jersey, is take a piece of paper and a pen, put away your smartphone, put away your laptop and your tablet, put away devices, and just go old school. Write down what to you are some of the advantages of renting and some of the disadvantages of renting, and then make another column for advantages and disadvantages of buying. And start to brainstorm. Make your favorite beverage and make a list. And when you feel like it's a comprehensive enough list for you, then look at it holistically. What makes the most sense in your life today? Not 5 years from now, not 10 years from now. What makes the most sense right now? Maybe renting makes the most sense for you for the next 2 years, but then you'll be in a position to try to buy your first place, because that next place could be your home for a long time. Let's say at least 5 years. But there's probably no point to buy if you know you're going to be moving in a year or two, right? So there's no right or wrong answer. It's a personal decision, but it does require some clear thought and some brainstorming. And in the world we live in today, where we're bombarded with information and we're constantly scrolling on our devices, it's important to take that time for some mindful reflection, for some quiet thinking, especially if you're trying to make an important decision. Do I continue to rent? Do I move to a different place to rent? Or do I try to buy? So you have to answer that question for yourself, but I hope in this video, some of the things discussed will help you with your own brainstorming and analysis. So thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.